technical personnel from other prospecting teams. These specialists were subjected to rounds of thorough questioning, made to fill out endless forms, and had their personal records carefully scrutinized. Not one of them was ever told where the information was being sent. At last, a large group of prospecting specialists was selected to join the new 723 project. The 1962 incident was causing a great deal of excitement. Rumors flew back and forth about the incredible thing the 723 project was said to have discovered. But despite all the stories, no one really knew for sure what had been dug up. For those not directly involved, this is generally where the story ends. The Cultural Revolution began, and in those dark times, no one paid any more attention to the mystery of the 723 project. After being escorted by military trucks into the mountains, those specialists were quickly forgotten. I was among the forgotten. There were 24 of us, selected and, by military order, put on trains to either Jiamusi or Qixihar. There we were packed into military vehicles, which rocked and bounced down the long road from Heilongjiang to Inner Mongolia. We began our journey on paved roads and highways, but the farther we drove, the more hazardous the terrain became. By the last few days, we were driving along steeply winding mountain passes far from any sort of civilization. I didn't have the slightest idea what was going on, but listening to my fellow passengers, I could tell that whatever had taken place within those mountains was far from ordinary. At the time, we all guessed it had to be something industry-related. Most of us thought it was a large oil field. Some of the older guys who'd been part of the huge Daqing oil field exploration spoke vividly of its discovery. It had been a similar situation, they said. After Daqing was first located, a select group of experts from all across China was transferred to the area. It was only after several months of discussion and verification that the oil field's existence was confirmed. We couldn't help but feel a sense of pride upon hearing this. After all, we'd been chosen. When we arrived at the lower base, we suddenly realized things weren't so simple. The first thing we saw was an unbroken line of army tents, large and small, stretched out along the basin, like a chain of grave mounds running infinitely into the horizon. It looked nothing like the base of an engineering brigade, but rather like the field station of an army preparing for battle. We stared dumbfounded at the bustling camp and all the engineer corpsmen running back and forth. For a moment, we thought our leaders had simply gone mad and were preparing to attack the Soviet Union. We soon discovered, though, they weren't all troop tents. Most were filled with supplies. A few veterans went off to take a peek and came back raving that the tents were bursting with Soviet equipment. In those days, our prospecting equipment was terribly out of date, and our methods had changed little since the time of liberation. Our country had only a small amount of so-called modern equipment, most of it bought from the Soviet Union at extremely high prices. As on-the-ground specialists, we'd never had the opportunity to see gear like this. The problem was, this Soviet equipment was used only for deep excavation, at a range of 3,000 to 4,500 feet underground. Until then, no one in China had mined to a depth of more than about 1,500 feet. Our country simply lacked the strength and ability to exploit those deep deposits. Even if we had wanted to, it would still have taken 5 to 7 years to set up the proper infrastructure before the mine would be operational. China needed resources to grow, but as the saying goes, distant water cannot quench present thirst. It was the government's policy to keep the discovery of deep deposits a secret, saving them for the next generation to use, rather than fruitlessly attempting to extract them. So to find this seemingly useless equipment here was puzzling. Our hearts were troubled by a strange unease. Nothing would be made clear that night. We new arrivals were assigned sleeping quarters, 3 men to a tent. Nighttime on the mountain was deadly cold. There was a stove inside the tent, but it was impossible to sleep. Even if you managed to doze off, the attendant would come to add wood, the wind would rush in, and the cold immediately awoke anyone still sleeping. There was nothing to do but sit up and wait for the light of dawn to break across the sky.